Good evening from New York. As Boss Limbaugh and the Republicans continue to demand that nothing be done by the government to fix the economy, advocating instead the same failed hands-off, rich get richer, everything else goes into the toilet approach that got us into this mess in the first place. This morning, a very real reminder of what is at stake and what is being done by President Obama to try to fix it. Our fifth story on the countdown, following the news that the unemployment rate has jumped again to its worst rate in a quarter of a century. The president attending the graduation ceremony of 25 Ohio police cadets whose jobs he helped save by signing the stimulus plan. A belated graduation ceremony today for the most recent class of cadets in Columbus, Ohio, who were supposed to have graduated in January, except a $13 million budget shortfall having forced that city to lay them off before they had ever hit the streets. Now, with money from the stimulus bill, a second chance and a solid get for graduation speaker. Some 651,000 Americans, no doubt, now among those hoping that jobs for them can be found the same way. That's how many more of us, we learned this morning, were cut by employers in February. The unemployment rate spiking to 8.1%, the highest it has been since 1983. That number reflecting the staggering 4,400,000 Americans who have lost their jobs in the current recession. Despite those numbers, the president still enjoying strong numbers of his own in the latest Newsweek poll out tonight, including a 72% favorability rating. Meanwhile, 58% of respondents say they believe that Republicans who oppose Obama's economic proposal do not have any alternate plans of their own. Yet oppose him they still do, some viewing it as a mission. Glenn Beck telling the Los Angeles Times that Roger Ailes came to him with this description of the fixed news organization which he leads, quoting, "I see this as the Alamo. If I had just had somebody who was willing to sit on the other side of the camera until the last shot is fired, we'd be fine." Mr. Ailes, almost everybody defending the Alamo died, unless you meant the people who attacked it, the people who hated Americans. At the White House, Obama Press Secretary Robert Gibbs explaining the rationale behind engaging talk show hosts like Limbaugh, in effect, to correct their lies. Quote, "There's a certain amount of theater to it that might make it more fun, but it's important that people understand the policy." Michael Moore, meanwhile, defending himself against recent suggestions that he is the Limbaugh of the left, pointing out that unlike Limbaugh, the things he believes in, health care for all, an end to the war in Iraq, going after corporate titans, those are views that have been shared by most Americans. Which brings us back to the president, today refuting Republican lies about the stimulus plan before those newly employed members of the police force in Columbus, O.
So for those who still doubt the wisdom of our recovery plan, I ask them to talk to the teachers who are still able to teach our children because we passed this plan. I ask them to talk to the nurses who are still able to care for our sick, and the firefighters and first responders who are still able to keep our communities safe. I ask them to come to Ohio and meet the 25 men and women who will soon be protecting the streets of Columbus because we passed this plan.
Time now to call in our own Howard Fineman, senior Washington correspondent for Newsweek magazine. Howard, good evening.
Hi, Keith.
Without those 25 new policemen in Columbus, and obviously they're a drop of a drop of a drop in a bucket nationwide, and without more Americans now being put to work because of the stimulus who are not even getting the publicity that those 25 people did in Columbus, how much worse might those jobless numbers be? I mean, does it become harder and harder to argue against Obama's economic plan on a day with a number like 651,000 that came out today?
Well, yes, it does, Keith, and that's one reason I think why our new Newsweek poll shows the president so popular. People want something done. They want an active president. They want people out there engaged, and the symbolism of those officers there keeping, working at their jobs is exactly what Obama's plan is designed to do. That's what people want. They want money spent because that's the easiest, quickest way to make sure that people have jobs.
But on the other side of the equation here, the House leader of the Republicans, John Boehner, not only called for a spending freeze, but he called for a spending freeze and didn't just start laughing uproariously. I mean, he did not lose the straight face there. That would be a replay, a spending freeze, literally a replay of the disastrous decisions that were made in the Hoover administration in the early 1930s, the things that cemented and put in place the Great Depression. I mean, how can somebody say that to other Americans, especially ones who've lost their jobs, that the best thing to do is nothing?
Well, Keith, in talking to people like the budget director, Peter Orszag, and to economists at Moody's and so forth, we're looking at whatever happens, even if Obama succeeds, at unemployment rates probably cresting into double digits. That's probably going to happen. The consensus of reasonable economists, virtually in their entirety, not all of them, but virtually in their entirety, is that the big mistake in the Great Depression was not printing enough money and not spending enough money by the government. That's the consensus. Now, if the Republicans have an alternative, they need to say what it is, but it clearly can't merely just be cutting taxes, and that's the box that they find themselves in today, and a historical one that seems pretty well accepted.
The Roger Ailes reference to the Alamo, what's worse in there, the exploitation of the Alamo as if it had been some sort of club in which millionaires were retreating, or this continued undercurrent of just barely violent things in things the right says about who's the president right now?
Yeah, I was thinking of sort of the Trump Alamo Tower or something like that. I mean, I've seen the Alamo. You probably have too. It's not a very fancy place, and the people who died in there weren't millionaires for sure. I think that Roger Ailes, who believes deeply in the philosophy that he expressed, shares a certain panic on the right. I think they don't feel they have ideas that are selling to the American people. They don't know quite where to go. They do feel backed into a corner, but it's a corner that largely they've backed themselves into, in part because of the failures of the Bush administration, which of course completely ignored whatever was good about the conservative philosophy of limited government. So they've lost the handle on limited government. They don't have an alternative to cutting taxes at a time when people know that that's not the only answer. So they're angry and confused, and that I think that was expressed, apparently expressed by Ailes to Glenn Beck.
And also expressed by the American public to Newsweek pollsters. Last point here, this nightly shelf life question, another part of that Robert Gibbs answered today about the wisdom of taking on Limbaugh. He got all sort of art of war on us. If your enemies are fighting themselves, then don't get in the way. Okay, I'm buying it, Sun Che, but I mean, is there not a shelf life on this one still?
Yeah, I think there is. And I talked to Gibbs earlier today to try to figure out what was going on here, because last Sunday, of course, Rahm Emanuel, the chief of staff, basically said, come on, let's get the war going with Rush Limbaugh. Let's keep it going. It's great for us, great for the party, great for the White House. Then Gibbs came out a couple days ago and said, well, maybe it's counterproductive. Well, Gibbs told me today he wasn't talking about the war with Limbaugh. He was talking about some other talking heads on cable, not Limbaugh. Well, that signals to me that the White House is doubling down on the strategy of really making Limbaugh the picture of the Republican Party and the conservative movement today. I think they're going to push it in their fundraising. I think they're going to push it at the grassroots. And if that's what the Republicans are left to do, the White House will be delighted to have it happen day after day. I think they're pretty much unified on that strategy right now.
Well, they can take on this talking head, because I don't know who I just claimed wrote Art of War when it's Sun Tzu. Howard Fineman of Newsweek. Thank you very much. Howard Fineman of Newsweek and MSNBC. Where were you when I said that? Thanks, Howard. Have a great weekend.